Hey guys, welcome back. I've decided to take a small break from the deep lore videos, in part because I have a big one coming next week. And so today, I'm going to relax and talk about 7 returning NPCs to Tears of the Kingdom. Not the big guys like the champions and all that. We are focusing on minor characters that appear in both games. I'm sure at least one of them is going to be a surprise to you. So kick back and relax while I walk you through the list. Let's talk about 7 returning NPCs in Tears of the Kingdom. Number 1. Grante the Wanderer. I'm gonna start things off with some of the Sheikah that we see in the game. Did you know that Robbie has a son? Yep, in Breath of the Wild, Jaren will tell you about him, and you can read about him in Robbie's memoirs over on his desk. He is a traveler, studying ancient armor just like his dad, and interested in seeing the world. You can't actually meet Grante until after you complete Tarrytown, which he will end up settling at and offer you his services to sell copies of rare armor that he has found. Fundamentally, he is a mechanic to sell you things like the Hylian shield in case you lose it, or if it breaks because you surfed down Hebra one too many times. Well, what most people don't realize is that Grante is in Tears of the Kingdom as well. His mother will briefly mention him during the Horn Statue quest. When you head to Tarrytown again and complete the short quest involving Mattison, you will be given an option to purchase your dream home. If you do so, you will be directed to a plot of land to the south, and the NPC who will be there to follow you around and actively get in your way is none other than Grante. Son? Huh, that's an odd spelling of his name. It would seem that he has appended son to his last name in order to gain employment with Hudson Company, which makes sense, and also makes me think that Hudson is now running some sort of work cult. Perhaps that is a theory for another day. Anyhow, Grante is happy to help you build your new home. I wonder what his father would feel about him no longer chasing ancient armor, and instead moving into the real estate business. But hey, I'm happy to see that he is doing something productive with his life at least. And if you ask me, that pendant around his neck hints at him being in a relationship. Number 2. Symin the Teacher. In Breath of the Wild, when we meet Pora, we also get to meet her assistant, Symin. Symin is a Sheikah, very tidy, a researcher, and seems to dabble in a lot of things. Basically, everything about this guy is nice and clean. A near perfect foil to Pora if you ask me. He was sent to assist her after being trained by Impa to help Pora in her aging years. The details are not the most clear involving him, but it is clear that he was there to help Pora when she was using her anti-aging rune on herself. And by her account in a letter to Robbie, he is apparently clumsy and unable to light the ancient furnace when it goes out. I don't know about that. Everything about him in both games seemed tidy, like I said earlier, and that isn't something I'd expect to see with a person who is clumsy. In Tears of the Kingdom, he is no longer a researcher, but still lives in Hateno. You see, Princess Zelda has created a school for the children and appointed Symin to be the teacher, though he is looking for more to help him. The placement of the school happens to be right next to where the old ancient furnace used to be. That furnace is gone, of course, like all the other Sheikah tech, but the placement of the school right next to it might indicate something. I speculate that Symin has a dual purpose here, to not only teach the children, but to keep an eye on whatever the furnace was connected to. It was a source of power after all, and it would seem that Zelda didn't want any of the Sheikah tech around anymore. I mean, even the old lamps are gone, and they were harmless, right? It's surprising that the Guardian on top of the tech lab survived as well, given that Zelda lives in the town. But perhaps Pora persuaded her to leave one husk around for the sake of research. There is one other thing about Symin of note. His school journal's final entry includes a message to Princess Zelda. He mentions that he has an ominous feeling about her going to the castle, saying that he felt the same thing right before the calamity. This is curious because Symin isn't old enough to predate the calamity. I don't think he is, at least. If he was, he would be, well, old, like Impa and Robbie. And before you bring up the anti-aging rune in the comments, Purah's journal in Breath of the Wild was very clear that she was the test subject, and that Symin was helping her. The journal also makes it clear that the blue flame went out after she made the un-de-aging rune to fix herself, and that Symin was too clumsy to light the lamp. When she went to do it herself, she was spotted by children who continued to keep an eye out for her, and so it remained unlit until Link would show up later. It is at that point that Link meets Symin, and so it is clear that his age hasn't been tampered with via the technology. I'll admit that there is more to this to consider. I look forward to any insights in the comments below. I have some odd thoughts about Sheikah aging now. The different races do seem to age at different rates. In the end, the Sheikah life cycle seems to be around 130 to 140 years, and so I might circle back around to this mystery in a future video. Before we move on, are you enjoying the video? If so, would you please give it a like and subscribe? I put out a video every week and could really use a higher subscription count. I won't pester you with any more of the YouTube stuff. Let's get back to the list. Number 3. The Curious Sefaro. I was originally going to clump the Hino kids together, but Sefaro ended up sticking out to me when I was researching Symin, so he gets to be featured all on his own. Anyhow, Sefaro is a small child back in Breath of the Wild. I would say 5 or 6 years old, maybe younger. He is the son of Seki, the guy who will dye your clothing by dumping you into a barrel. If you observe this child's behavior, you will see that he wakes up and immediately rushes off to be with his friend, and that the two are actively monitoring the Hino Research Lab, a place that is off limits. They have seen Purah in her new child form, and are convinced that there is a new Sheikah girl in town. As adorable as their behavior is, I find his progression in Tears of the Kingdom far more interesting. You see, with the introduction of Cece's fashion in town, the dye shop has been having a bit of a boom. It's been about 6 or so years, and so Sefaro is at the age where he can help out with the family shop, which is exactly what his father wants. However, with the new school, every morning, Sefaro and the other kids rush off eager to learn new things. We can see that the boy has a practical mind, the type to look for evidence and proof before taking things at face value. He is the one who asked for a photo to prove the ancient calamity was real during the calamity classes. There is more to him though. Symin's evaluation about him says that he will quietly select a book to read instead of rushing off to play or heading home. It would seem that he is far more interested in learning than helping out at home, and honestly, I can't blame him. Seki is an artist, trust me. I know firsthand the ups and downs that come with being that. Seki also wants Sefaro to follow in his footsteps, and yet the boy clearly walks the path of being a researcher, a historian, with a thirst for knowledge. Perhaps those early days of gazing at the Hino Research Lab, looking for the mysterious new girl, has had more of an effect on him than we realize. One more thing, we know that the last Guardian Husk is on top of the lab, something he is likely aware of. Consider that him asking for proof during the Calamity class wasn't so much a desire to see evidence, but instead was hoping that Symin would take the class to go see that Guardian Husk, and thus he would finally be able to see the lab for the first time. If that was his goal, then he is a very clever boy indeed. Speaking of being as slick as a banana. Number 4. The Yiga Banana Salesman. This NPC doesn't have an official name, but I believe that they are the same person across both games. In Breath of the Wild, the Yiga will set up traps for Link, posing as NPCs trying to get his attention. Of course, with the Yiga being masters of disguise, the NPC will take on the appearance of a random Hylian or Sheikah. I love these encounters, like the lady who is trying really hard to get you to say the name Link, all while you drag it out by saying other L words that fit her criteria. Anyhow, one of the Yiga members will pose as a merchant selling mighty bananas at an absurd price, a whopping 99 rupees each. You can legitimately buy them too, and he will be happy to take your rupees. Of course, it doesn't matter how many you buy, be it none or all of them, he will still attack you. I personally would have made this an optional fight. Like, if you buy his entire stock, he could instead thank you, and then disappear instead of fighting, needing to get that money back to the base, right? Anyhow, in Tears of the Kingdom, there is a similar Yiga member you can encounter, this time appearing on the Great Plateau at the entrance to the snowy area. You will be there trying to sell roasted bananas for 129 each. A similar situation to before, you can buy some, none, or all of his stock. If we look at the dialogue between the two games, we can see that there are similarities in both terms and behaviors from him. If you start to back out of the sale, he will put pressure on you trying to secure it. When he finally reveals his deception, he will say a similar phrase about it being for the bananas. I can't be 100% sure that this is the same guy from Breath of the Wild, but I think it is. It's always nice to bump into old acquaintances, right? And I mean, who doesn't love bananas? Number 5. Wabbin the Courageous. In Breath of the Wild, we encounter a man who is a bit shy. His name is Wabbin, and he is trying to find courage to approach Perda at Lover's Pond on Tough Mountain. Fortunately for him, or maybe unfortunately as you will see, Link is there to help him out. After delivering a blue nightshade to her for him, she approaches him and the two awkwardly find out that it happens to be both their favorite flower. This is the start of their relationship, and years down the line in Tears of the Kingdom, we discover what happened to them. Since that time, the two lovers have had a daughter named Auclet, roughly the same age as Mattison from Terrytown. The two can be seen playing together throughout the town. Perda brought her daughter to Gerudo Town, for the same reason that Rondason sent Mattison there, because of Gerudo custom. It is Gerudo law that daughters be returned to the city, so they can be taught how to properly interact with males, what the Gerudo call vows. The Gerudo have another law that I'm sure you are all aware of, which is that men are not allowed within the city, and thus we come to an interesting aspect of Wabbin. Wabbin is aware of the laws. He knew that if he ventured into the city to see his wife and child, that he would be thrown in jail. The game doesn't explain to us if there's a time limit to how long he would be locked up. At least not that I've found. But when talking to him, you can see that he is determined to stay in town locked up because he wants to be there for his wife and daughter. That's touching. He is choosing to sacrifice his freedom to be with his family. It would seem he has learned some courage over the years after all. The other interesting aspect of this one falls into the issue of Gerudo law. You see, there is a moral problem here, where this world presents the idea that Gerudo can take their daughters from the father without his consent. I'm not passing judgment on that part, but I am passing judgment for the Gerudo not offering means to allow the relationship to continue with the father. This whole situation with the Gerudo, outlawing men, etc., it doesn't sit well with me. Let me be clear, this is not a discussion I will be having in the comments. But hey, on the bright side, at least Link doesn't need to cross-dress in this game to infiltrate the town. He is accepted, if only because Riju grants special permission to him. Perhaps someday, poor Wabbin here could receive such permission as well, because at the end of the day, all he wants to do is support his family the best he can. Number 6. Hino the Lunatic. Hino is an interesting one, because of all the people that we see in the world of Hyrule, he is basically the only person paying attention to the moon cycle. Well, specifically paying attention to the blood moon. It's a bit interesting because a blood moon will come regardless of the actual moon cycle. Just when it is time, it happens. Of course, we know that this is a respawn mechanic the game triggers after so many hours of play, and that it can be force triggered if the system needs to clear memory or something. But what I find most interesting is that Hino is able to tell when the blood moon is coming, and since it may as well be random since it isn't locked to any specific moon phase, that means that he has some means of detecting it when others don't. In Breath of the Wild, you can find him at the Dueling Peaks stable generally hanging out. He will tell you about the current moon cycle, and a little about the blood moon if you ask. If, however, you come to him when the blood moon is in the sky, he will, let's just say, go a bit crazy. He will start running around like a lunatic, talking with red text, and going on about the moon. It's rather bizarre. Once the event finishes, he reverts to normal. So, what happened to him between the games? His obsession with the moon remains, causing him to track monsters, study them, and the effects of the blood moon on them. This of course ends up with him getting captured all the time. Why they don't kill him, I honestly don't know. When you rescue him, he will thank you and give you some food, talk about the moon, and then be on his way disappearing. However, if you wait until a blood moon to rescue him, you can see that he indeed still has his obsession. He doesn't run around like a maniac anymore, but he will use his classic red text again. I wonder what will become of him now that the Demon King, and presumably the blood moon along with him, have ceased to be. Number 7. The Goron Couple. Over in Goron City, there are two Gorons named Trey and Volcan. They seem to be partners, run an inn, with Trey handling the business side of things, while Volcan is the friendly face to lure customers in with a warm smile and promise of a nice massage. Of course, what might be a nice massage for a Goron may not be the case for a Hylian, but he sure is friendly about it. Anyhow, I'm sort of cheating to include both of them on my list, but that is because of them being together is what makes this interesting. You see, throughout the Zelda series, it's been a bit of a mystery how Gorons reproduce, and these two finally give us some insight into that. Once you complete the regional phenomenon problem in Goron City, you can start a side quest with these two. It is here that we get some insight as they explain that Gorons are born from the mountain. Decades ago, back in the 90s after Ocarina of Time came out, there was a Japanese interview in a magazine that asked if there were any female Gorons. At that time, Tori Osawa, who played a role in NPC dialogue in the game, stated that there were female Gorons, but that they were indistinguishable from males. Well, this new in-game revelation throws that old interview completely out the window. Volcan and Trey are specifically wanting to return to the spot of their birth together for, well, it isn't explicitly stated. It is my belief, and I am not stating this as a fact, but I believe that these two are in the stage of wanting to create new Gorons. That their goal is to return to their birth site in order to do whatever is needed to facilitate the creation of new Gorons. We don't know what that process is exactly. And obviously, Nintendo isn't going to tell us. It could be something as foreign as them planting bits of themselves into the ground to grow, kind of like growing plants or rocks. And yes, rocks grow. That is how crystals get bigger. I'm not going to give you a geology lesson on that today. The other thing that catches my attention about these two is that they behave like an old married couple running a business. Again, you can disagree with me. I see what I see. And if Nintendo is going to leave things to player interpretation, well, this is how I'm choosing to interpret this. This quest in Tears of the Kingdom seems to me that they want to create children, possibly together, in whatever method Gorons do to facilitate that. Representation matters, and even if it isn't the most explicit, to me, seeing something like this in a Nintendo game is of great comfort, even if it is minuscule and basically out of sight. And no, let me just clarify that this is not something I will be discussing in the comments. Maybe with a channel supporter or Patreon member on Discord, but not in the comments. And that's all I have to say on that. That was 7 interesting NPCs in Tears of the Kingdom. Let me know if you guys like this style of video, and I might put out more showcasing other characters. I do have others I would like to talk about, but of course, it all depends on if this video does well. Speaking of which, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. The channel needs growth for it to be sustainable, and it's almost there. For those of you who can do a little more, consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member. It really is the best way you can help me out, and I want this to be my livelihood. If you do join, I will give you a shout out on my next video. and your name will be featured with all the other supporters down below. You'll also gain access to my Discord, where we can talk more directly about upcoming content, or things that I don't feel comfortable talking about in the comment section. That's all I got for you today, guys. Be safe, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.